everyone. Today we are going to talk to some energy planners. Let's welcome our first guest.
Hi everyone, I'm Ngô Duy Khang. I'm one of the members of the 14.
Thank you. Let's start with some background information. Do you know anything about Royal Dutch Shell?
Yes, I do know a little bit information about Royal Dutch Shell. Or we commonly know as Shell. It is one of the oil and gas company that still maintaining right now. And in 5 years before, it is one of the company that have the highest revenue. The revenue at that time is equal to 84% of Dutch national, which is 556 billion GDP. Shell is an active in almost every single area in maintaining oil, like producing, refining, transporting, or distributing and marketing.
It's awesome. Then, how much do you know about energy, especially oil?
Well, energy gives power to a lot of needs for a country to grow and maintaining their system. It is also a basic material for national economic and to grow and social development. And one of it is oil, which is a common energy that still be using these days.
How would you determine your priorities?
Like I said before, energy is an important material for social development and national economic. However, it have a limited amount in the world. So if I was the one responsibility for energy policy, I will use it wisely and develop a new way to reuse and regenerate energy.
Well, do you think there's a better way than scenario planning? Do you have any other methods of planning?
Hello, I'm Alvi and I'll speak about why scenario planning might be the best approach for energy planning and some other planning approaches we might consider as planners for energy policy. Now first I'd like to briefly talk about Venezuela. So Venezuela controls about 20% of the world's oil reserves. In the 2000s under Hugo Chavez, the country became solely focused on oil production and sales. This led to the decline of other sectors and today they are experiencing hyperinflation, extreme poverty and shortages. So if you're in charge of the energy policy of a country, this is sort of a worst case scenario where your economy is concentrated on a single sector and natural resource. You do not have complete control over oil prices and your economy becomes extremely vulnerable. When planning for energy policy, you have to take into account several issues. From the perspective of an economist, the primary issue would be climate change. Climate change is happening, it's a fact, and it is going to have far-reaching impacts on our society. This means a long-term plan with a focus on expertise is necessary. If possible, we would like to transition away from fossil fuels towards renewable energy. The second issue would be diplomacy and political relationships. We live in a globalized world, a world of open economies. Instability in another country might affect us. For example, in June this year, USA placed sanctions on Iran. This led to instability in the Middle East and oil prices all over the world rose. So we can't predict how every single country is going to react in certain situations. The leadership can change, our country's objectives and outlook might change. This incident also highlights the issue of fluctuation of energy prices. Then there's advancements in technology you have to understand. We also have social issues such as income inequality, where the gap between the rich and poor is increasing at an alarming rate. In the future, will energy only be available to the rich? You have to think about the state of healthcare. So as planners for the state's energy policy, you have to take all these criteria into consideration. We are not going to have a one-size-fits-all solution that takes into account of everything. That's where scenario planning comes in. The goal is to anticipate all alternative future scenarios and have sets of action planned for them. The process basically entails forecasting various scenarios based on their likelihood and possible future trends. For each scenario, we'll be looking at the courses of action and the effects of energy policy and the economy. So it'll mean the team in charge of energy policy and the nation as a whole will be better prepared for shocks. In the case study we did, Shell realized that they wouldn't be able to predict the future well. Well, nobody can. What they can do is to have enough projected scenarios, so they predicted possible severe effects on the energy industry and took steps to combat that. They diversified their company into coal, nuclear power, and metal mining when oil prices rose. Thus, I believe that scenario planning is the most suitable approach for energy policy planning because there are so many variables at play. It can be very easy to get sidetracked from the primary goal, which is to have sustainable energy. If you're a planner for the state, your possible situations have to be all encompassing. This approach will allow you to at least be ready to react in situations. Now, there are other tools and approaches we can use. One would be forecasting. Forecasting is instrumental in scenario planning, both qualitative and quantitative. For qualitative forecasting, we will likely consult a panel of experts on energy policies, climate change, etc. Quantitative forecasting would consist of math models, statistical analysis to make projections for possible scenarios in the future. We'll also incorporate the tool benchmarking into our process. This will mean that based on our developmental stage and population, we will look at similar countries who are doing well and try to incorporate their ideas into our energy policy framework. We will also be looking at countries such as India and Russia, countries who are exceeding their energy targets for cutting down emissions. Now, other approaches we might consider are strategic plans, which help us define long-term objectives and action plans. Then there's tactical plans, which work in tandem with strategic plans. These are more short-term plans, which outline how to execute several stages of a strategic plan. Now, I believe these two to be a bit more of a spontaneous approach, as it requires a bit more adaptability. You'll be making changes on the fly based on the situation, whereas scenario planning involves mapping out several situations from the start, and that will prepare us better. Then there's contingency planning, which is a more short-term version of scenario planning. My group member will elaborate on its suitability to energy planning. I believe while scenario planning should definitely be the basis on which our energy plans are focused on, the key would be not to focus solely on it. We should also try to incorporate ideas or more short-term plans into our framework. This would allow us to form and execute clear goals and objectives for the government and organizations to follow. Now, I'll be passing on to my teammate Arthur, who will compare scenario and contingency planning approaches in relation to energy planning.
Let me interview the next one. Hello. Can you introduce yourself?
Hello everyone, my name is Xie Dongyang. I'm a member of the first team.
Well, do you know anything about scenario planning?
Yes, simply defined, a scenario is a description of a possible or problem future. The scenario defines a set of future events that would affect the organization's performance. As I know, scenario plan is a strategy tool how use has increased determined in the last decade and is one of the most commonly used tools in strategy development. Scenario planning produces a strategic means for managers to event alternative reviews of what may happen in the future as an aid to strict operation and filing planning. Scenario plan will review all trends that like to affect the business, especially interconnecting between issues and the market. From that, help us invent and previous trends that have good quality and quality. We can also assess the influence of each scenario and development strategy and architecture for each of them when using scenario planning. Scenario planning allows experts to explore and prepare for several alternative futures. It examines the outcome a company may accept under a filter of
operating strategies, and economic conditions.
What about contingency plans?
Contingency plan like a scenario plan, contingency plan also anti-future events and incorporates the anti-nature plans. Whereas scenario team usually look at a wide range of possibilities within an organization's environment, contingency plans focus more on a practical demanding event over a shorter period of time, one that demands a repaired response. Contingency planning is a risk mitigation program for developing backup plans in anticipation plans of events that may disrupt business as usual.
So, which one do you think would be most useful for an energy plan?
Due to loose information above, we think scenario planning is most useful than contingency planning. By reading and testing various what-if scenarios, managers can brainstorm together and challenge their assumptions before they decide on a certain course of actions.
What are the obvious questions to ask at the organizational, community, and government levels?
Hi guys, my name is Kalpit Bhatt. I am from the team 4. My part is tell you about the Paris Agreement and its benefit. First, I brief you what is Paris Agreement. The Paris Agreement itself concluded in December 15 as a formal matter of the result. 4-year negotiation launched in the 2011 at the COP in Durban, South Africa. Paris was an historical agreement that broke new ground and marked a paradigm shift in the climate diplomacy. It addressed many issues, but I will single out what I strikes me as most central. The Paris Agreement constant of the defined long-term point for tackling climate change, and it is based on first ambitions both to hold the increase in global average temperature well below 2 centigrade and to achieve net zero emissions in the second half of the century. The second one is emissions target that would be continuously received and updated on 5-year cycles. And the third one, a call for the countries, organization and community to outline their long-term strategy for low emissions development by mid-century. So now obvious question will be asked at organization, community and government level will be how company adopt the Paris Agreement. Another question is to redefine corporation strategy allocation to which interested will climate mitigation and adaptation, and third and most important one is focus on the fossil fuel emissions. I will tell you how the company adopt the Paris Agreement. One approach is to adopt a design sustainability approach in which new products are designed to minimize waste and to be broke down for recycling. On further example, I will tell you Siemens Corporation has developed a declined environmental portfolio of the carbon efficient product. While another example is the Saint Gobain, the construction and packaging giant, puts a sustainability housing technology at the core of its product development strategy. So now my colleague Akshit Jain will continue on further detail. Thank you.
How will an organization begin to think about the management of planning processes related to climate change and sustainability?
Hello guys, my name is Akshit Jain and I'm the member of Team 4. So the another question is to redefine corporate strategy to align business interests with climate change mitigation and adaptation. Business can take the initiative in managing regulation risk. The first step in preparing for and helping to shape future regulation is to understand the policy options. The second step is to develop an internal strategy on climate change to put the company in a position to react effectively on regulations and policy changes. And the last and the final step is to work with external stakeholders such as regulators and industry groups to get their perspectives. And also, a poor reputation on climate can hurt sales through consumer boycotts or local community protests. It could damage the regulatory environment and investor relationships. And also, it could make the company less attractive to current or future employees and also their current and future customers. And also, the companies need to focus on their fossil fuel emissions as it is very important, and they must use green ways and solar power for their use. The arguments against corporate social responsibility include fears that the pursuit of this goal will reduce business profits, raise business costs, dilute business purpose, give business too much social power, and do so without business accountability to the public. In contrast to this, the socio-economic view holds the management of any organization must be concerned for the broader social welfare and not just for corporate profits. Among the arguments in favor of corporate social responsibility are that it will add a long-term profits for businesses, improve the public image of businesses and help them to avoid more government regulation. Businesses have the resources and ethical obligation to act responsibly. And at last, I would like to say that once attention has been applied to problem definition and identification of alternative options, managers and analysts can begin to develop provisional approaches for the assessment process and the analysis. The sustainability assessment and management approach should begin to develop provisional plans about the level and depth of analysis, the level, extent, and timing of stakeholder engagement, indicators by which they will judge the decision outcomes and processes, and collaborative opportunities to explore the range of potential solutions and approaches. So, in order to be successful, the overall sustainability process will probably involve a high degree of collaboration, including federal partners, state and local governments, as well as the private sector, non-governmental organization and other stakeholders. So now I would like to end our report.